Here we go. So,
So Veronica, you said we've got a quorum and we could begin.
yes.
Okay.
So just as a quick introduction, Lisa Judd, who many, if not all of us know from her former employment, is working for RCHDC. And Dan McIntyre, who usually facilitates this meeting, he isn't able to attend in the beginning half of the meeting. And so Lisa has been appointed as Dan's alternate. And so she's in the process of logging in. So Lisa, I just kind of introduced you. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. And do you feel comfortable facilitating today's meeting? Jackie, I think Lisa might be having audio
trouble. Yeah, so let's call the meeting to order.
Thank you.
And let's verify that we have our quorum present.
Okay, so when I call your name, please let me know if you're here. I'm unable to see your screen, so if you nod or give me a thumbs up, I won't be able to see it. So will you please give me an audio I'm here? So our first one is Aaliyah Armstrong.
I'm here.
Thank you. Faith Dayton.
Here.
Teresa DeSimone or Todd Crabtree.
Here.
Jacqueline Williams.
Here.
Natalie Shepard. Joanna Olson.
Present.
Paul Davis or other representative from Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center.
Here on Paul's behalf.
Hello, Ayana. Thank you.
Hi.
So I'm gonna add you here. So this is another introduction I should make. This is Ayana Lambert, an alternate for Mendocino Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center, excuse me. Okay, moving on. Xenia Levacho or other representative from Mendocino Community Health Clinics. Okay. Karen Lovato. Blythe Post or Brady Nord. Nancy Torres for Mendocino County Youth Project, another new introduction and alternate.
Here.
Thank you, welcome. Judy Albert.
Here.
Sage Wolf. Or
Here.
Is Camille here today as well?
I doubt it.
Okay, just checking. Lisa Judd. I'm going to come back to that one. Will Van Zant or anyone from the Veterans Administration?
Here.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to count Lisa as here, and maybe we'll hear her soon. And that's a quorum. That's 10 members, 11 members represented. So we have a quorum.
Okay, let's move on to public comment. This would be the time if you have general comment that you'd like to make to the COC. I don't see anybody anxious to do that or hear anybody anxious to do that.
I received no advance request and no written public comment.
And Veronica, we don't have minutes to approve today.
No, they've all been approved already.
Yay.
The last meeting was a joint board and full membership meeting. So we were able to approve 2 sets of minutes. So we have none for today's meeting.
Okay. So let's move on to reports and presentations and begin with County of Mendocino. Karen or Megan?
I'm a little bit late, sorry. I'm not seeing Karen here. Is that correct, Veronica? Okay. There's no significant updates from the County of Mendocino. Things are quiet, moving along. No drama. I should knock on wood. I don't have anything significant to report from the county.
Megan,
Yeah.
would you like to speak about our recruitment?
Our recruitment. Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. There is one small announcement. The recruitment for our family homelessness specialist just kind of went live. It closes October 4th. So this position will be the linchpin of our family homelessness project. And the classification is called a senior program specialist. So anyone who's interested in working in that project, please consider applying. And if you want more information about it, feel free to call me or email me and I can tell you more about what it's all about. Thanks, Veronica, for that reminder.
Okay, Shannon, do you have an update from the city of Ukiah?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just got a new computer like half an hour ago and I can't figure out how to get the camera to work and I'm struggling. So I apologize for the technical difficulties here. Not a lot to report from the city of Ukiah. We are, still working our way through the recruitment of the police chief, as I stated at the last meeting where I've been asked by reporters and such, how many people have applied so far? The answer is 0, because we are working to engage a stakeholder group to help us develop the candidate profile or the job description. So that's how kind of far back we are in the process right now. So we are strategically selecting members of the community to be interviewed and really help provide their perspective on the police department in Ukiah and help us inform how we take the next steps. So I can't even tell you what kind of police chief we're looking for right now until the community tells us what we're looking for. So that's where that is. And we have engaged a professional recruitment firm. And then once we do this work with their stakeholder group, we'll develop the candidate profile, start the recruitment. So we're probably a good 4 to 6 months out before we start actually interviewing anyone. And then again, we want to engage this community stakeholder group in the interview process as well. So we intend for this to be a very transparent, very public process in a lot of ways. So that's where that is. Last meeting, I reported that we were taking enforcement action on the Regency Inn. So that did occur. It's been almost 4 weeks now. Most of the tenants did vacate the building and were moved to other locations or found housing. There are still some tenants in the building, and so the owners are supposed to be going through a formal eviction process with them as they were long-term tenants. Again, the property owners are responsible for relocation fees and things like that. And we are still waiting for the owners of the Regency to provide a detailed plan on how they intend to renovate the building, which we have not yet received. There's been some resistance there. So I anticipate additional conversations similar to this with the COC as we do start to take a more critical look at our lodging enforcement, or I'm sorry, our lodging establishments, many of which are very subpar at this time. So we want to make sure that if your clients are using these lodging establishments as homes, that they are suitable and safe homes. So that's where that is. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that if anyone has any.
Well, so Shannon, this is Judy. So, I mean, it's interesting because, I would think that most of the housing, and I remember the explanation from last time in terms of CDC, but it seems like it's a little bit of an interesting thing that CDC normally would have to approve and check these, but now what I'm hearing from you is that there's kind of an implication that there is other motels or living situations that are subpar and probably not fit for human habitation.
So Judy, I can provide some context to that.
Okay, thank you.
HUD offered some waivers on different programs because of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of those waivers was that the initial inspection on new housing units that tenants were requesting did not require a physical inspection by by the CDC housing inspector. It was a self-certification completed by the landlord.
Oh, okay.
And so if the landlord, reported information that was either incorrect or changed over time, like, mold grows, it doesn't start there, maybe it wasn't when they first moved in, or maybe there was running water then, but it changed over time. And so either situation could have happened. So I'm not going to say that landlords incorrectly or lied on a self-certification. I don't know. I can't, I'm not going to, that I'm sure that has not happened in most of the cases. It's just that, sometimes that self-certification, people can misunderstand it, things like that. Teresa, hi. Could you maybe add a little bit of context to that?
Yeah, so we were allowing COVID-19 waivers for inspections for a period of time. And exactly like Veronica said, we were allowing a self-certification that unit met housing quality standards. And also something to remember is housing quality standards are basic standards that are somewhat lenient, and they may not potentially be as strict as the city code enforcement. I'm not sure if I'm using the correct words here, but those are different standards. So something could potentially qualify as under housing quality standards for somebody to receive rental assistance in a unit, but it may not be sufficient for the city. I don't know if that answers any questions for you.
So code enforcement could be more restrictive or, or have more requirements than the HUD standard.
Well, so my only concern is, I'm not necessarily hearing this from you, Shannon, but if the city decided to take an active role in city code enforcement, which might be a higher standard than a living standard for the CDC, it could create more homelessness for certain residents.
Yeah, thanks, Judy. I think that's a really important question. And I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because I know we have a full agenda today, and I'm happy to have conversations offline with anybody. To be clear, regarding the Regency, we have been engaged in code enforcement activity with that property since 2017, well before COVID. So this has been an ongoing problem. And the codes that we are enforcing are literally health and safety violations. We're talking about vermin and pest infestations and black mold and very dangerous fire safety hazards. Like we're talking inoperable smoke detectors, unsafe stairways, things like that. So these are pretty basic building things. We are not expecting this to be the Taj Mahal. This is, however, these are directly related to the safety of the residents. So for example, in a meeting there, one resident said, but I'm keeping my place very clean. And that was true. His particular room was clean, although it did still have pest and mold problems because of the rest of the building. But it didn't mean that tenant was safe necessarily, because on either side of him there were no working fire suppression or smoke detectors or things like that. So the building that this poor gentleman lived in was still extremely unsafe. So there's a much bigger picture, and maybe this will deserve like an agenda item and bigger discussion at another time. But I just kind of wanted to update the group on that particular property since I had mentioned it at the last meeting.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, because I know we do have to move on. I do want to add though that at that particular property, not all of the rooms were ones that were being able to be approved for vouchers. And my understanding is there was a pretty big disparity between some of the remodeled rooms and some of the older rooms. All of them may have had long-term tenants in them, but less than a third, my understanding, were actually had housing vouchers. So I think what happens, I think Shannon's point is well taken. You have properties where may have remodeled or updated certain rooms, but not the whole building. And it still is like a building issue, but it doesn't necessarily mean all of the rooms were in the same state of disrepair, but it is an issue. And we know that there's many clients who are not using vouchers. I don't know how they're surviving, but are paying very high monthly rent in some of these properties, probably just through, I don't even know how they're doing it, but not using vouchers. And those tenants are of concern as well.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, we have about 4 households in there right now who are being assisted. Also, we have revised our administrative plan. We've added a local HQS policy to allow us the discretion to fell units for HQS that are having code enforcement issues or violations. So we have moved to do that as well.
Thanks. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Shannon. Do we have anybody here from the city of Fort Bragg? Okay, Point Arena, is Paul here? All righty. Then we'll go to our standing committee reports. So we'll begin. Dan's not here but Megan is. Is this the place in the agenda where we're going to review the strategic? No. Okay.
No. Yeah. So we'll there's nothing to report other than what we'll talk about in E1. Yeah.
Okay. So no strategic planning update at this time?
No.
Okay. Shelter Solutions, Angelica.
Well, we did meet. I don't know if I want to, because it sounds like you guys have a big agenda today, but most of our discussion at our last meeting was with Kate Pagan, and she's from the sheriff's office. We talked about discharge planning and other reentry services that the sheriff's office does. And so, I mean, I could go into detail in terms of what she discussed with us, or even better, she could come and talk with the board. I definitely got a lot from the conversation, and I know Judy, Sage, and Nancy were all there. I feel like we all work in our own silos, and it was very interesting just to learn from perspective what is going on in the sheriff's office in terms of reentry and discharge planning. So could save it for a later time.
Thanks, Angelica. I'll put that on a future meeting. I think it would be great to invite Kate. So we all work in our own kind of focus areas. And so when we get to look at services through the eyes of a particular cohort, I think we learn a lot. So I think it's a really good opportunity for a future meeting. Thank you, Angelica.
Just real quick, and just going back to Shannon's thing, I also think that we should have a bigger agenda item for code enforcement, because we're definitely seeing an impact just with the Regency. So if this is going to continue in terms of enforcement actions, I think we do need to talk about it as a COC.
So if you were to prioritize those two, Angelica, what would you do first? Or has greatest impact?
Probably the code enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sage, do you have a coordinated entry discharge planning update?
Sure. Where the coordinated entry committee is holding a training in October. We're looking at October 13th in the morning, but the date's not solidified yet. We'll be sending a notice out to those agencies that are involved in coordinated entry as soon as we have that date solidified. If you are not sure, if you have somebody who's interested in doing coordinated entry or somebody in your agency who is doing coordinated entry work and you're not sure if they're going to be on the email list, please reach out to me so we can be sure to send them an invite. What else could be updated right now? We're having some agencies do a lot of work around cleaning up their enrollment. So that's good to keep our coordinated entry list really up to date and make sure we're really working with the people who haven't disappeared. We've got new engagement and coordinated entry through the Northern Circle Indian Housing Authority. So that's pretty exciting to be able to get more of the tribes folks enrolled and accessing resources through coordinated entry. And that's what I've got.
Thank you, Sage. Veronica, do we have a membership committee meeting?
Not a real update on past progress, but the home team has been making more headway on the membership committee work. And so Carly Lytle, our staff assistant, has become a full-time permanent employee. And so she's moving to 40 hours as of today. And so part of her responsibility is going to be like supporting the COC membership, like administrative support. And so there will be more to come on that soon. We'll be doing an orientation for many of our new members. Today we have quite a few new members, some of which we've been able to introduce. Since the meeting began, we had someone join. Amber Portlock works for Manzanita Services. That's as their fiscal representative. And she, it's under Tapestry. And so she is here, I believe, on behalf of Natalie Shepard. Amber, if you're able to hear us and you want to come off mute and say hi.
Yes, hello. Yes, I'm here on behalf of Natalie Shepard, who's out of town today. So I'm stepping in to learn a little bit more.
Welcome.
Thank you, Amber.
Another update that we've already shared, Lisa Judd is now with RCHDC, and she is here on behalf of Dan McIntyre. Nancy, hi Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Lisa Judd. I'm the regional manager for Mendocino County over here, RCHDC now. And sorry, I had some technical difficulties as well. I just moved into a different office like a couple minutes before the meeting. So I was just scrambling to get that all situated. So, but it's nice to be here again.
Welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Veronica,
do you have a HMIS report today?
No, we haven't been doing our committee meetings recently. Brian Klosky is out of town, and so we don't really have much of an update other than we're treading water.
Okay. So we should we ask for input on any of those reports before we, okay. So we are entertaining your input on the committee reports that were just given in case people have comments to make. Okay, let's move to the ad hoc committee reports. Our first item is the 2022 point in time count and housing inventory count. Veronica?
Yeah, so it's that time again. It's time to start preparation for our 2023 point in time count. And so my recommendation is to disband the original, the 2022 pick count ad hoc committee and reestablish one for our 23. It just doesn't take any motion by the board. It's an appointment by the governing board chair or co-chair. And so with Jackie's direction or approval, we can go ahead and start and form a 23 ad hoc.
And you know, when you're on this ad hoc committee 3 or 4 times, it's a direct path to heaven when you die. That's why you want to sign up for this.
So Nancy Torres of Mendocino County Youth Project has stepped up to be the inland captain or team captain. So in place, his previously Amanda Archer had that position, and now that she's executive director, Nancy's stepping up for that role. I know historically we have a representative from Mendocino Coast Hospitality Center, and unless Ayana corrects me otherwise, I'm sure they would be willing to volunteer for the coastal count lead.
Of course.
Excellent. And so is anyone here willing to take on representative for North County? It's mostly posed out of Willits. Okay, so that's okay. I'm going to keep recruiting. Would anybody like to be invited to be on the committee? Do you want to speak up now?
Can I, Sam Netto, our supervisor at Building Bridges, I think would be great to have involved. I'm probably somebody from the Arbor too, but I'm not exactly sure who yet. So start with Sam and then I'll get somebody. I want to say we do have, like, Jen Aragon is working a lot out of the Willits area, and so possibly could be helpful for the North count, but I can't commit her until I talk to her.
Okay.
Thanks, Sage.
Well, if you would like to volunteer, go ahead and feel free to email me at any time. When we form the first meeting, I'll invite everyone on our COC list. So you'll see an update email soon. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so Veronica, are you or Megan going to give the CFC program funding recommendation update? The second item here.
It's you, Veronica, right?
It is. I went on mute mistakenly. So I just wanted to share that the 2022 funding recommendation ad hoc committee has completed its job. It's making a recommendation later in the meeting, so it'll be disbanded after at the end of this month, once the COC application is submitted.
Okay. Any comments on our ad hoc committee reports? Okay, so let's move to our strategic plan review.
Okay, I'll pick up this agenda item. It's really the main item on the agenda today. So what you have before you is the kind of shortened version of our strategic plan that the COC adopted in, I always remember because it's like right before the pandemic, or like literally like March 2020 or something. So the COC adopted the strategic plan in March 2020. Jurisdictions throughout the county subsequently endorsed it over the next 4 or 5 or 6 months. And then we spent some time in the last probably 6 months going through and really paying attention to how much progress we'd made for each of the different goal areas, as well as tightening up some of the language. So what you have before you is pretty much mostly the substance of our original strategic plan. There's some cleanup done. That was done through the input of the strategic planning committee. The strategic planning committee met twice on this. They probably don't remember because it's been a couple months, but they did meet twice to go over the strategic plan. And we really did wordsmith a lot and really kind of spent a lot of time looking into what needed to be updated, as well as agreeing to how much progress has been made on each different of our strategies within the goals. A couple just highlights for you all, like big picture takeaways from this most recent draft. We have made significant progress even in the middle of a pandemic. We've made a lot of substantial progress in both goals 1 and 2, which are really the heart of trying to address homelessness. So making homelessness rare, making homelessness brief in one time. I mean, I look at this and I'm pretty amazed at the work we've done as a community in getting our ducks in the row and really both getting people housed, but also getting some of our infrastructure in place. I want to remind us all, we did not have a landlord liaison position before the strategic plan happened. We have one now. Lots of new housing projects have come online since this project began, some of which, went through a pretty, rigorous process of using coordinated entry to fill at Orchard Street. There's whatever it's called now. Orchard, what is it? Orchard Meadows? No, what is it? What is the new one over on Brush Street?
Or Creek.
Or Creek. Okay, sorry, it's near Orchard. So anyway, and we've had just to remind you all, because the COC did this, the plateau in Fort Bragg still not open because of the inexplicable PG&E delay, but going to be open sometime soon and super fabulous. So there's just a lot of new housing projects. I know that RCS has some new housing projects that are going to be coming online soon. Project Home Key happened during the pandemic, and we're about to refill in the next couple of months another 20 units. So there's just a ton of progress in actually housing people, which is the most important work. I do want to highlight where we have not done a lot of work is publicity, policymaker engagement. We were supposed to have a outreach and public relations team. That kind of work did not happen over the past 2 years. And I think really would behoove us if we can find the energy and time to really figure out how to start doing that more intentionally in the next couple of years. So you'll see that those are the areas where there's minimal progress and some of those goals. So I'm going to pause there. What we're asking the board to do today is to approve the strategic plan, this latest draft, this update. It's not a new strategic plan. Approve the update to the strategic plan that we will then use as a tool to communicate with our jurisdictions as we have in the past. So any comments or questions?
Before we open it up, I just wanted to provide a little more context. On the left side of each strategy, we've added color-coded and added how much progress has been made. The green is significant, yellow is some, and red is very little. And I also wanted to add that we have a lot of plans in place to further along a lot of those goals that have some progress, like our family homelessness. We have a family homelessness challenge grant coming on board here real soon. We're recruiting for that, family, that housing specialist here with the ACT team. And so you will see a lot more significant progress in the next 6 months to year. I do believe.
I agree. Yeah. So are there any like major problems people are seeing? We'll start first. Like red flags, things they hate. Okay, so I'm not seeing that. Is there any small concerns or small issues or medium that you'd like to add or take away or need explanation? Well, I'm going to see this as a good sign. So I will point out that a number of us on this committee were also on the strategic plan, so have seen this a couple times over the past 6 months, and we're pretty involved in reviewing it already. So it's not new to some of us in this Zoom room here. Well, I'm going to take this as a good sign that we're on track. Our strategic plan is still sound and strong. It is pretty substantially correlated with our HAP goals. If you remember, we kind of went through that painful process of coming up with some HAP goals. So our plan with Veronica is to use the HAP goals as our outcomes for this plan, so that it's all somewhat in the same place, and we're looking at one set of measurements for progress, the ones the state are requiring us to do, rather than that. So that's the one piece that I don't think is actually written into this plan, is the specific HAP grant funded goals that we've already worked out as a COC. So Veronica, we should add those in at each goal at some point. Won't be hard to do.
We absolutely can.
Yeah. Or even maybe we'll figure out how to do that, but it'll all become in one document. So yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
When I think about those, it's almost like we could highlight, there is alignment. We could call out what this is that. So there's no holes.
Mhm.
And so I feel like it's a really good job.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I still think it's a pretty good guiding document. We've held true to it, and I'm going to encourage the COC to continue to really focus on these goals and not get too distracted by brand new ideas. Not that the brand new ideas might not be great, but like really think of them in the context of how much we have the capacity to do. One other thing I think that says some progress on here, but really already could probably be substantial progress is around our coordinated entry system. A lot of really good work has been done there, and I see just a little bit more in the future to really get it tight. But there's a lot to be proud of.
I agree. We don't have an infinite amount of resources and time, and the fact that we continue to roll up and impact the things that we said were most critical, I think that's
yeah. If we'd spent a lot of time on like publicity and outreach and not in actually housing people, that would have been like unfortunate. So if we were gonna like let one sit by, like talking about what we do is less important than actually doing the work. But at some point, and not here, maybe we'll find some other venue for it. I do remember Shannon Riley saying she was willing to take the lead or be involved in some of the outreach and public relations. So we'll have to find a way to get that done in the next year.
I will.
Okay. You don't need to do it right now, but just like as we it's on my mind as something we need to focus on it at some point soon.
So can I ask,
go ahead, Judy.
Thanks. Is the landlord tenant navigator that was hired by CDC, is that a permanent position forever ongoing?
I think that's our hope. I'm not sure if they have it exactly funded that way, but it's a priority for our community. So I'll let Veronica answer that.
So I would say yes.
Okay.
We started the position with ESG CV funds,
Right,
through rapid rehousing, to really, get it off the ground. The COC and the county both have budgeted HAP, homeless housing assistance and prevention program, that we have all budgeted money in the landlord. I don't think
I think it's literally called landlord engagement, isn't it? Or
landlord engagement. That's what it is. I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking liaison. So landlord engagement. So I would see that because CDC responded to that RFQ as we'll do it under any foreign funding source. I think that as long as the COC agrees and the county agrees, we can renew that contract with HAP funding and continue that position. And review it as needed.
I just want to really promote it because I just heard so many stories from clients anecdotally of when they received outreach from the coordinator to say, oh, here, I just heard from this, this place is open or this, or I can help you with this. And it really was kind of like there's one point where they can go to get information. It really did help. It was, it reminded me of when I can't remember where those people came from, I think from Sacramento, and they talked about how important that point person was. And it really did help a lot of clients.
Yeah.
I have a question about that housing navigator position. Who can be assisted by them? Is it only folks who are assisted by CDC through a voucher or?
No, at this time, because 90% or 0.9 FTE of the position is paid by ESG CV, which is allowed to be used to serve two populations. One is persons who are literally homeless under HUD's definition, or fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. And so Danielle works almost exclusively with that population. And that's the position that the staff member's named Danielle Wilfong with Community Development Commission. And her other 0.1 FTE is through the EHV, or Emergency Housing Voucher. And so there is some crossover between the literally homeless and EHV, but a lot of times they're folks who are in rapid rehousing, who have come up for an EHV voucher, who she may already be working with or already worked with to get into housing. And so it's anyone who's literally homeless. And when we start using HAP funding, I'm sure that that population will be able to expand, but that'll be up to CDC to determine kind of what the scope of their ability is. And then we can discuss it and negotiate from there.
So people can be assisted. Do they have to go through a different agency to get assisted
No,
by Daniel, or they go straight to CDC?
there's
and
two
say,
ways.
I'm literally, I mean, they're not going to say
Yeah.
I'm literally homeless.
Right.
They're going to say, I don't know what, I honestly don't know what literally homeless means. Like if they got a 3-day notice to quit or a 3-day notice, is that literally homeless? They're still in a home, but they're probably going to be evicted. I don't know.
Right. That would be like imminent risk or at risk of homelessness. And so that's actually a different homeless definition, but that's where the EHV part comes in. And so that's kind of the population that we would be, that CDC would be considering expanding into. Teresa, do you want to add anything into this conversation? I'm kind of speaking on behalf of CDC, but it's because I manage that contract.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the information you're giving is great. So I think that with the EHV program, our landlord liaison covers the population of people who are homeless, at risk of becoming homeless, recently homeless, and those who are in domestic violence situations. And then the rapid rehousing funds that covers just literally homeless people. So people who are actually out on the streets, correct?
Yes.
For the most part, yeah. So it covers a pretty broad population, and we actually just ended up providing some services and assistance to folks who moved into Oar Creek Phase 2, and they're not receiving rental assistance from CDC, but they were still able to get those landlord liaison services. Does that answer your question, Angelica?
I think there's
I mean, I just want to make sure, in terms of like, it sounds like the housing navigator. I mean, other agencies have housing navigators, right? I think, but I want to make sure, like, if there are any gaps, that those populations can access them.
Yeah, I think, and Angelica, it's just to be clear, the position the CDC has is a landlord liaison. So it's not exactly a housing navigator. They're doing really intentional connection with landlords. So it's a little bit different than a housing navigator. Just to be clear about that. So I'm not sure that the other organizations have positions they would call a landlord liaison. It's the other organizations have positions called housing navigators.
And the other half of Angelica's question about how they get connected, there's two ways that I know of, and then there's other natural connections that happen. So one way is Danielle accepts referrals through our HMIS, or Homeless Management Information System. So any of our coordinated entry assessors, they can send a referral in HMIS directly to Danielle with all the client's information on how to act and what a summary of what the services are that they need. The other way is with the housing specialists at CDC and their front desk, they interact with a lot of people who, hey, I'm in this situation. How can you help me? Well, they know, if this person has a notice, if they're experiencing homelessness, they go grab Danielle. Right, Teresa? Is that what happens over there? They grab Danielle and how can I help? And
yeah, absolutely. Our landlord liaison is always someone who will come up and talk to those who come in to the front desk, and people can make their own self-referrals. And so the people at the front desk, if they hear somebody who could potentially benefit for those services, then is connected with our landlord liaison.
And anyone here or through our homeless system, they can call CDC and speak with Danielle about any clients. So Angelica, if you're ever in a situation, you're welcome to call them or give any of your clients Danielle's phone number. 707-463-5462 extension. Do you know her extension, Teresa?
She's at extension 102.
102. Perfect.
So Megan, were you hoping we would make a motion and approve the amended strategic plan today?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so let's pull ourselves back to that and entertain a motion to move us forward on, since we didn't hear any objections or red flags. Who would like to make a motion to approve this revision of the strategic plan?
I would move to approve this revision of the
Sage.
strategic plan.
Second?
I can second that.
Thank you, Teresa. And then do we have to do a roll call vote, Veronica?
You're muted, Veronica.
Okay, yes, we do need to do a roll call vote. So board needs to take official action. So I'm going to go through the list. And when I call your name, please let me say yes if you approve, no if you do not approve, or abstain if you'd like to abstain from the vote today.
So Veronica,
yes.
we had a couple board members join since we were discussing this. I see Karen's joined us. Karen, we
Yes.
are just reviewing and approving the update to the strategic plan right now.
Thank you. I caught that. I was aware
I
of
figured
where I came in
just-
early enough. I really appreciate that though. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Aaliyah Armstrong.
Yes.
Thank you. Faith Dayton.
Yes.
Teresa DeSimone.
Yes.
Jacqueline Williams.
yes.
Amber Portlock.
I'm gonna abstain on this one.
Thank you. Joanna Olson.
Yes.
Ayana Lambert.
Yes.
Karen Lovato.
Yes.
Nancy Torres.
Yes.
Judy Albert.
Yes.
Sage Wolf.
Yeah.
Lisa Judd.
Yes.
Will Van Zandt.
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you.
Great, thanks, everybody. So our next step is we'll pretty it up a little bit. There's just some, like, not the substance of it, but some pretty, make it a little bit tighter. And then probably at our next strategic planning committee meeting, we will make a plan for approaching the jurisdictions if that seems like the right timing for that. So we'll figure that part out as well. And I think that's it for that
And-
item, Veronica. Yeah.
I think Jackie's talking, but Jackie's on mute.
Oh.
My question was, did we agree that before we present this, we wanted to tie in the other HAP goals too? Or
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all righty. Further updates for the board around funding? Veronica?
Yes, we have one point of discussion and that requires official action by the COC board. We are in the middle of the 2022 COC program Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. That's our annual COC competition. We received 2 applications, both of which were from the Community Development Commission, and both of which are renewal applications. There was funding available for new projects under the COC bonus funding, and there was also funding available for a COC victim service services, but we didn't receive any applications for those. Our tier 1, the amount is listed on the last page of your agenda packet. So it's in the second to last paragraph on the bottom of the page. HUD has identified $1,752,061 as the Mendocino County COC tier 1 amount. And our tier 1 is what HUD says this is how much funding we have for everybody at a bare minimum. So that's what it's kind of tier 1 is almost a guaranteed as long as you meet the minimum requirements of the COC grant program in your in our collaborative application. So that covers almost the full amount of CDC's. Well, let me back up a little bit. So that's our tier 1 amount. The COC funding recommendations ad hoc committee, which I'll refer to as committee from here on out, they met, rated, and ranked the projects. And the outcome of that is also included in the staff report on the last page. The application from CDC for their tenant-based rental assistance in their permanent supportive housing project was ranked 1. And the CDC's coordinated entry system supportive services only project was rated 2. So going in that order, 100% of the PSH funded requested amount falls into tier 1. And there's a remaining almost about $1,098 available in tier 1. And so that'll allow that amount of the coordinated entry system budget. And that'll put the remaining balance into tier 2. And that's just a little over 92,000. And so that 92,000 will fall into a competitive bucket. That's awarded by HUD in order of their final scoring of our full COC application and their project applications as well. A lot of detail there.
Veronica, remind me,
Yes.
in the past, have tier 2 funds typically been funded?
No.
Okay.
So projects that straddle tier 1 and tier 2 are typically renewed, but projects that
Mm-hmm.
fully fall into tier 2, like our HMIS COC bonus application from last year, that was not funded.
So this straddles it, but not much.
But only by $1,100.
Okay, all right. So the chances.
Yeah, last year it was 50-50, and the year before that as well. And so I think Congress gave HUD just a little smaller of an amount this year for their renewal projects. And so it reduced our tier 1 a little bit as compared to last year.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And so the rating and ranking process brought out a couple of things. And they're described in the staff report if you'd like more specific detail. One was the committee noticed that one question was answered incorrectly. The application said it was not a Housing First project, but all of the questions that they answered prior to that described it that yes, it is Housing First. So they changed that response to yes. And then the other one was a discussion about the match amount. And so, Teresa, are you able to
speak to
yes.
that? Yeah. So we asked McCavan if they wanted to commit the same match amount that they had said they would commit. I think it was 710,000 or something around there. And they wanted to reduce that match to 300,000. And we are okay with that. That still gives us what we need to move forward with it. So Joanna is going to send us an email by the end of this week.
Excellent. So just to verify, the match commitments that CDC has received does meet or exceed the 25% match requirement, correct? You're nodding yes.
Yes.
So yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so all the committees, just discussion points have been addressed. And so their recommendation is to approve the COC priority listing with PSH as 1 and the coordinated entry system as 2.
Would anybody like to entertain a motion? I will.
Okay.
Now I'm looking for a second.
I can second that.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
I think this
Isn't-
is open.
Does that mean now is the time for questions or comments, or are you, okay, I have questions. I'm wondering what the applicant, actually have a couple, one about PSH and then one about coordinated entry. I'm wondering what the coordinated entry application has described as the activities that will be provided under that, if they were awarded that contract or that grant.
Let me pull that up. I don't know if Teresa can respond before I can.
Who can speak to that?
I can. I'm pulling up the document right now.
You suddenly got very quiet, Veronica. I don't know
There
why.
you go.
Yeah.
Oh, now
I
you're,
mumbled.
yeah,
Oh.
now you're good. Okay.
Okay, I was mumbling to myself.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. Open. Now I got to get to the right question.
Sage, do you want to ask that question again?
Sure. I'm wondering if you can give a short summary of the activities that are listed under their coordinated entry application.
I'm looking further east now. Well, let me try a difference.
And I don't necessarily, I think what might be easier so that you don't have to take the time of this meeting is more that if that gets awarded, if that list of activities could be shared with the coordinated entry discharge planning committee so that we can, because I that's been a piece that's been missing in the past. And it would be really helpful for us to be able to support CDC with conducting the activities of that grant. Sorry,
my YouTube went off. Let me show you what they said in their application or what their summary was in their local application. It says, this grant will continue to support coordinated entry processes and continuing implementation. Over time, more and more system providers are utilizing CES and participating in HMIS. Description of the coordinated entry process follows. So that's the proposed project outcomes. And here's the written project description.
okay.
And then here's the continuation. Here's the use in the second paragraph. CDC has hired 2 staff persons who are on a part-time basis who have their jobs dedicated to several coordinated entry tasks. Staff will work toward the goal of ensuring all those enrolling clients in coordinated entry do so in a uniform way. Additionally, staff will work towards better integration / coordination with a domestic service provider. I think that means a victim service provider. Additionally, in Mendocino County, there are rural geographic areas where there are limited services and transportation between these areas can be challenging. Staff will help market the coordinated entry process in these hard to reach areas and provide a toll-free number. Does this answer your question more?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then my second question around PSH is it would be really helpful to have associated with that project a summary of, or like some sort of description of where PSH clients get those supportive services and what those supportive services are supposed to look like, and how clients access them. As a primary coordinated entry screening location, Building Bridges has a lot of people who end up accessing the PSH project, but we don't have the supportive services through Building Bridges and have had a really challenging time accessing those. So having some sort of a description for that project of how the clients access supportive services for PSH and what those supportive services are supposed to look like would be really helpful.
You know, Sage, I think, I was jotting down like future topics that we need to tackle. And I think that one really is to me, Sage, it's more than just having something written down, but let's really be clear on what's actually happening. Because I think you're identifying I think a key weakness in some of our PSH programs, that there's been a lot of like, sure, we'll do this kind of expectation, but it's not super grounded in reality. And I don't think that it's anybody's fault. But what seems to be true about the PSH vouchers is the SH part, the S part is not really well funded. So you have the P and the H through the voucher, the permanent housing, but the supportive part, I'd say this is sort of a national weakness in that sense of like, who is actually providing the supportive services? Let's acknowledge that they probably need to happen forever, and who's really doing that work and how are they being compensated? So I think it's a important, like, long-term question.
Thank you. We feel it quite acutely at Building Bridges, being one of the primary coordinated entry locations. And we don't want to drop clients from services, but we're not, anyway, I don't know what to do with our housing navigation caseloads because they are so bogged down with permanent supportive housing clients, but we can't carry them, but we're supposed to be a rapid rehousing provider, not a PSH provider. And if we're going to be, anyway, it's very intense over here if you look at our caseloads. So I just thank you.
No, I think it's a really important topic. And to me, I get more and more concerned as we have more and more availability to house people that are at a PSH level. Those supportive services are critical for them to be able to stay housed. And
well, I'm almost afraid that they're scarce now. And as we add more to it, everyone gets
it's terrifying.
Thinner. And I think Karen can explain that and say, that's just a common issue. And I do think I like the way Sage just described the problem, and it's widespread. So I do agree we should add this to the list. I'll bring Dan up to speed on this one too.
And Sage, do you mean terrifying meaning? Tell me more what you mean by terrifying.
Well, okay, so for Building Bridges, at least, it's our target population. That hardest quote unquote hardest to serve population, that would be the PSH population. That is like specifically the way that Building Bridges is set up we prioritize that population, but we don't have the mechanism here to provide the long-term supportive services through Building Bridges, and we don't know how to access those supportive services reliably to get them into PSH and keep them there. And so the longer this goes on, the more terrifying it gets, because I don't want us to end up in a position where we look like we're failing at serving the target population that we're saying we can serve. We're saying we can serve them, but when their long-term outcomes don't look good because we don't, anyway, it just is like, it's setting our projects up to look like we're not doing a good job.
When the reality is you're serving
so much more. So I don't mean to derail into this other thing, but I really just appreciate the little bit of time to highlight how do we support our PSH projects with being supportive. How do we get them to be supportive?
And I think that's a really important topic and could be like its own little workshop. And again, I would look to the HUD-VASH program, who literally does supportive housing, you know, as like, what does that actually take? Because that's the like gold level standard that we need to actually start reaching towards for all of our clients, not just the veterans. And what I feel a little bit of an not advantage, but I'm grateful that I understand this a little bit better from having been so involved in Project Home Key, and I understand what it takes to keep people housed. And at all levels, but particularly really challenged individuals who've been homeless for a long time. It is not a like drop you off at your new house type of thing. I mean, you can do that, but
I've
it's
been
not gonna
saying
work.
this
For 20 years.
I've been saying this in this meeting for years.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, it's just no one's funding. There's no funding source to provide like, you know, licensed clinical social workers per 20 homeless people or 25. That's what it takes. And that's what the VA is doing. And, you know, I don't know when that's going to change, but.
Well, we have like, you know, licensed clinical social worker for 20 people, or we have like 0. You know, there must be something in between that would be better than, you know, I share Sage's concern. Sometimes people get housed and I'm like, is this going to work out? And so we need to start having those conversations so that in 5 years we have something built, because that's how long it'll take. But if we never start talking about it, we'll never get there.
To honor this discussion and request, I believe, and with this board's approval, maybe including it in the motion that will, or maybe amend our motion, to provide in the letter that the collaborative applicant sends CDC saying the outcome of today's meeting, with the rating and ranking that the if you approve it, that we can add into that letter like a paragraph summarizing that the COC requests a present. I'm not really sure how to phrase it, but requests that the CDC consider or expand upon the supportive services piece of the PSH program.
So Veronica,
yeah,
well, the way I think of this is kind of what we just learned from Will, in that I think we could take Sage's real life client base and we could extrapolate what it would really take from Will's experience and say, this is the shortfall. I mean, rather than say, can you help us? I think we need to measure it with people and associated dollars. So people really understand this isn't a give me 8% more. You know, that's not where we are. This is a whole. So I agree we could attach that. It's not like a request, but like maybe a work group of a few of us should get together and create the problem statement, create what the local estimates of folks in that situation are, and what it would really take to impact it.
So we could include in the letter a request to CDC to participate in that process with the COC.
I think that's fair, because really their funding is for tenant-based rental assistance, right? It's actually the rental assistance piece, which is critical. But what Sage is identifying is what, in order to be successful with that population, they need more than rental assistance.
I have a question.
But more than that, sorry, I just want to clarify that what they're applying for is a joint application of tenant-based rental assistance, and they're saying that the supportive services are going to be provided through a specific mechanism.
Oh, I see.
And that mechanism, I think, is historically unclear. And like hearing that McHaven is committed $700,000 a year to providing those supportive services, and then or now $300,000 a year to provide those supportive services, when it's been unclear if McHaven has capacity to actually provide that volume. And the mechanism for getting clients connected to those services has not been, so it's not just tenant-based rental assistance that's being applied for. It is actually a package, even though the money that the COC funding is paying for is only the rental assistance. Without that commitment and path for supportive services, CDC wouldn't get the rental assistance component.
I see what you mean.
So
I got it.
It is wrapped up in the application
I
project.
see. No, that makes sense. So what you're saying is, although the funding itself is paying for tenant-based rental assistance, the application includes an explanation of how those supportive services will be provided. And we want to make sure, I mean, this funding application is going to go through, it's going to do its thing. But as a community, we want to make sure that we actually are able, as a community, to do that supportive piece.
And those supportive services are identified in the TRA application in the in-kind match. And so that discussion about those match letters, that's where those supportive services are communicated to be provided to HUD.
And that's where I think, I mean, this is why it is a broader conversation. That's where I think that HUD in general, allowing that to be match when there's just a broad range of what the match could actually be, has been a flaw in this program. It is, because although let's pretend somebody is getting behavioral health services, that behavioral health services care manager may not think of themselves as also the person who's supposed to be keeping them housed.
Right. And I think where we have a big gap is if they aren't in Medi-Cal, or if they aren't in behavioral health services through Medi-Cal, how do they get supportive housing services? Because I have no idea. I've been in this for years. I have no idea how someone gets supportive services for PSH if they don't meet the criteria or don't want behavioral health services.
And I would argue that the behavioral health services are often just that. Behavioral health services are not necessarily about tenancy sustaining services. That's not what they really are, right?
I mean, they certainly can be if it's part of the client's overall goals and overcoming, impediments to independent living. Absolutely would be included in maintaining and supporting housing. It isn't the primary focus, but it is absolutely something that the care management team supports. But Sage is right, and that if they don't meet criteria for our services, or if they choose not to have our services, there's really limited options for funding for other alternatives.
And Helica, you had something to add.
No, Sage actually mentioned what I was going to say about the match and McCavan. But I did have another question in terms of like the actual, how many certificates are we talking about? And I guess logistically, so if McCavan is going to provide the match for these certificates, like how do folks get linked up automatically, or how would that work with McCavan?
Usually what happens for somebody who's on the permanent supportive housing program is they're pulled from the by name list, right? And that person has an identified housing navigator or case manager in the HMIS system. And we go through the eligibility process. They're issued a certificate. They hopefully end up finding housing. And
so these certificates are going to be put in the pool of the larger program of permanent supportive housing certificates.
They are the permanent supportive housing.
Oh, they are? They're not on top of what already exists?
No, I mean, Teresa, this is our annual.
That's a lot for McCavan to handle. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that answered, or should I continue?
Yeah, no,
I got it. You got it, Teresa. I got it.
Okay.
But this is a rock we haven't really wanted to look under in the past, but it's just more important that we start looking under it as we have more and more housing options to get people housed, right? I think in the years where we were housing maybe 10 PSH clients, maybe it just wasn't quite as like on our mind, but we've been housing a lot of people recently. So this is becoming more stark, that we need to make sure that system in place to keep them housed is as strong as it should be.
I agree. I think that we've evolved, and so the way we're doing things needs to evolve as well.
So Sage, I'm going to lay this on you because you started this mess. Do you what would be best, a work group to just go off and really do a deep dive, or do you want several of us to join your regular meeting of discharge planning and all that? Just what?
I think this overlaps so many different pieces. Like, I haven't even brought this to coordinated entry discharge planning because it's not a coordinated entry element.
Right.
I speak to it every time we have a stakeholder group for building bridges. Every stakeholder group for building bridges, I'm like, client, help, what am I supposed to do? But so
I think it needs its own work. I mean, I don't know if it needs a work group, at least needs a meeting to start with.
I think a meeting, maybe
Yeah.
to define and try and scope the issue that we could then bring back and test that understanding across the group. Maybe that's as good as we can begin with. Would you be able to do that with me, Sage? If we co-chair that? And then
yes, please.
And
Yes.
can Sage and I nominate the rest of you as needed? Or do you want to volunteer? Like Teresa knows she's on the bus, so she's not even going to say.
You know, I think it'd be good to have, you know, Will at least present the model of what the VA does.
I agree.
You know, in terms of, you know, obviously we're not going to be paying social workers. We're not going to find that kind of funding. But, you know, in terms of, you know, peer advocates, like what would be the real, I mean, I'm sure this is a cost issue. I mean, truthfully, it's just like finding a housing liaison and navigator. It's again, finding enough staff who really do the outreach to say what's happening with your housing and why did, you know, what happened here or something like that. You know, I mean, oftentimes it's really a staffing issue.
Well,
it hasn't been.
When you say staffing, it's really cost of staffing.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right. So I just wrote a grant for a similar issue, in that there are some populations that we're working with that really require a higher level of support.
Yes.
And so I would like to try, and I wrote a grant to see if, rather than have housing specialists, because we also provide vocational support for our SUD program, I'd like to create one case manager that can help you figure out how you get another copy of your driver's license and help you figure out what you might be eligible for through social service. I mean, we kind of need, for some of these folks that have really been referred around the horn multiple times, and you know what, we're looking at reentry people, that making it where they can come to their outpatient treatment person or a case manager that will answer questions about helping them get in a job and helping them get housing. Don't fan it out, you know, try and focus resources, because some populations really, I think, need more focus and sense of ownership on our part to help them through the first 3 or 4 months after they
absolutely.
Well, I mean, I hate to introduce this, it's such a huge topic, but there's some very specific funding pieces within CalAIM that are specifically really linked to this, you know, enhanced care management, housing tenancy services. So there are funding streams that are supposed to do this. Is it going to be the level that we know is necessary, which is a licensed clinical social worker per 20 people? Probably not, but we should shoot for that because we know that's what's needed. But so I think in this initial meeting, Jackie, that you and Sage have, there are some new funding opportunities. So it is a really good time to have that conversation.
Right. It would help all of us then to kind of map across what we think, what the Mendocino County need is, and create those estimates so we could watch for it. Because I don't think everybody in this situation needs a licensed clinical social worker, but they need somebody better informed, and they don't need 3 or 4 people that they can go ask questions of when they have questions. They need a little higher ownership from us.
Like sort of more proactive.
Exactly.
Like person.
Yeah. Okay. So we have Will as a expert that's bringing his expertise. Sage and I will co-chair this meeting. We're inviting Teresa. Who are our other volunteers that would like to join us? This will just be a Zoom meeting, guys.
I'll join.
I can help.
Jackie, you can invite me. Don't schedule around me, but I wouldn't mind listening in.
Okay. Who said, was that Karen and Faith?
I said, I think, well, Faith said
Somebody else?
something.
Okay.
I said something.
Oh, Judy. Okay.
And I think I'll second what Megan said. I'm happy to be invited, but don't schedule around me. You'll never get it scheduled.
Okay. Joanna, are you game? Oh, She's not hearing us.
I
so
don't know, Jackie, that I have time right now.
I bet
But
that's
thank
true.
you. Thank you for considering me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll give this a go and have something to report back by our next meeting. Okay, so shall we separate or not include this task we're going to do as a part of that? You know, your suggestion, Veronica, was to add to, and now should we do that or not do that?
I think we should add a request for just to say that the COC would approve the COC priority listing in this order. And they have requested that CDC engage in a work group to
Well, let's just say investigation.
Not a work group.
Yeah.
Okay, investigation into the supportive services and the in-kind match. Okay.
Okay. Is that okay, Sage? Were you the person that made the original? No. Who made the original motion?
I didn't. You did.
You
Did I? Look at
Yeah.
me. Okay, that's good with me. Who wants to second that motion?
I second the motion.
Thank you.
So
Did you
the
second?
motion is to approve it. TRA is
priority?
1, coordinated entry S2, and the and with the request for CDC to engage in the supportive services investigation. So that's the motion on the table. When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain to the motion. And again, I can't see you, so please unmute and speak up. Our first one is Aaliyah Armstrong.
Abstain.
Thank you. Faith Dayton.
Abstain.
Teresa DeSimone, you must have, yes. Jacqueline Williams.
Yes.
Amber Portlock.
Yes.
Joanna Olson.
Yes.
Ayana Lambert.
I'm sorry, abstain.
Thank you. Karen Lovato. Karen, I can't hear you.
Karen said yes.
Okay, thank you. I can't see it. Nancy Torres.
Yes.
Judy Albert.
Yes.
Sage Wolf.
Yes.
Lisa Judd.
Yes.
Will Van Zant.
Yes.
Motion approved. I have no further funding updates for the board, but we can entertain questions or discussion on any of the funding sources listed or others.
Okay. So now would be the time if you guys have questions for Veronica or Megan about other funding. We have no updates on the programs that are listed.
This is not an official update because it's not on the agenda, but there's nothing official about it. But I did want to let the board know that we if you remember, there was some question about the tenant selection process and some of the documents associated with the plateau. Because there had been a little bit of miscommunication when that project first got up and running. I was really happy that when Veronica and I finally reviewed the revised information that they sent, I feel really good about that project moving forward and that it's going to meet the expectations of the contracts that that project signed to accept HEAP funding. But my point in bringing this up is that when I was reviewing the contract, I was reminded that both of the large housing projects that we used HEAP funding, the Ore Creek Commons and the Plateau, we're due to kind of report back to the COC on who was housed and the demographics of who was housed. So that is now on my radar, and I'm hoping to bring that back to the board as an informational item sometime in the next couple of months, which I think will be really good to kind of close that loop.
Thank you.
And Lisa, one of those projects is Ore Creek Commons 2 with RCHDC. So you're welcome to reach out to myself and or Megan about
Okay. All right.
So let's just open it up for announcements from the board. You have announcement that you'd like to share.
I just have a few.
Okay, I'll make one. This is our 25th year of delivering residential treatment in at Fort Street. So this is our silver anniversary.
That's awesome, Jackie. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are
Thank
you doing any like fun things?
We announced it at the recovery event, and now we have a few more like PR stuff to make sure the community know. We thought celebrating it on Recovery Month in September, but it's slowly running through September for me. So you might hear this in October, but we're still celebrating.
That's great.
Anybody else?
Sure. Just to dovetail on that, Behavioral Health and Recovery Services is also recognizing Suicide is Prevention Month, which is the month of September. And so we have a calendar of events on our webpage and on our social media pages of various different community outreach events, training opportunities, Luminaria, honoring those who've died by suicide in Mendocino County. We were in Fort Bragg on last Saturday. It was really powerful. We'll be at the Pinoleville Walk in Alex Thomas Plaza next week. So there's a number of events and opportunities to honor and recognize. We're going to try to put together a similar calendar of events honoring those who've died to opioid overdose in October. So we'll be bringing additional events in October. So look for our calendars for that. And I'm sorry about the vote. I was unable to mute. My computer locked up. So sorry about that, Veronica.
Not a problem. Okay.
I just have a quick announcement.
Oh, yes. Well,
There's a stand down in Lake County in Lakeport on Wednesday and Thursday, which is a event, kind of like a resource fair for homeless veterans. So if you know any, and Mendocino County homeless veterans can definitely go. But that's going to be on, this Wednesday and Thursday from like 10 to 3 at the Lakeport Fairgrounds.
thank you. Well, our next meeting is October 17th. Thanks, everybody.